Hello everyone, this is MadLetter. I'm back again with a quick tutorial on the creative side of things again, which is just about most of what I do nowadays on the channel if I have the time. So, today I want to show you something. I recently got into a new role-playing game, Lancer by Massive. Go check it out, it's really fun. And I want to show you real quick how to do something like this. This is a kind of like a greater area space map, a sector of sorts, with one central node, the Shasta-Blink Gate, from which these lines emanate, a distance setting essentially. There's a couple nebulas and other things, and I'm gonna show you real quick and dirty how to do something like that. So, we start with a big empty white box here, and we're first gonna go ahead and paint it black. So, we're gonna go ahead, create a new layer. Let's zoom in a little bit. And for now, we're gonna go ahead and take the simple line tool. We're gonna take the white color, just slap down a bit of a line here, and there we go. That's first step. So now we go ahead and render it down into a single layer. No, not like that. Just add a new layer, select both, Control E. I don't need it as vector. Specifically, I don't want it as vector. I want it as pixel data. So now we go to blur, we go to motion blur, and there you just check up the distance. You can see it gets this nice kind of like fade line out. Let me actually get a bit closer so you can see it better. Once again, we go to blur, we go to motion blur, check up the value, and you can see it grows thin on the outside, a little bit thicker on the inside. That's more or less what we're going for. So hit OK, zoom out again, and now we just copy that layer. You can do that by pressing and holding Alt and just moving the layer a little bit. Now we have that twice. We press Ctrl T to transform. We keep Shift pressed, so we rotate only in 15 degrees. And we make a cross out of it. We once again copy both of them. Ctrl T, 90 degrees, and then, again, 45 degrees actually, sorry. And then take the inner ones and just make it a bit smaller. At the moment we're creating essentially a representative icon for the stars, something like this. You can already see the vague similarities here. So next, create a new layer. We take our brush, and we just take the soft round brush. Hardness 0, size we're gonna adjust as we need it, and the opacity we're gonna go down to, say, 33 roughly, somewhere around that area. We have white as a color, and you just click in the middle a couple times. Wonderful. We increase the size of the brush. You can do that by pressing and holding Alt and just right mouse button, and left right increases size, and up and down increases the hardness. So make sure you stay at 0 hardness. Diameter a bit up, click once again, and then go all the way fairly big, and create another one like that. We already have a fairly nice glow. Now we're going to go ahead, make it a bit smaller, and just put another glow here. Yeah, bit too much. Reduce the opacity. There, much better. And then we just keep going, add a couple light details. I wish it to be. And then you're gonna take all those layers, you're gonna right click and convert to smart object. There you go, you now have a single layer. What this does is essentially stores all the relevant data in a file inside the file, basically. If you double click on it, you can get back into the editable mode, but that's not what we want right now. So we close this again, and we can just essentially reduce it in size now. And there we have a wonderful icon. It's a bit much on the outer glow front, so let's actually go ahead and change that down a little bit. There we go, much better already, much better. Okay, that is one of the big first steps. So now we have the icon. Now we obviously want the background. For that you can just essentially search Starfield or something like that, or Starry Sky. You'll find plenty of usable things. There's also other tutorials out there that can show you how to actually create Starfield your own in Photoshop. I'm just using one I found online for the purpose of this. So let's put that on top of the black layer and then go ahead and set the opacity down a bit. So next thing we're going to do is essentially get in some noise. Like right now it's all very very beautiful and very boring. We want some more variation in there. We want some patches where there's more stars, where there's no stars, you know, that kind of stuff. So for that we're going to create a new layer on top of the star field we imported. We go to the brushes again. Here, you just need to find something that works for you. I have created, for my own purposes, a very specific brush. I'm willing to share that if you guys want. Let me know, I can do that. I just need to find it, the Galaxy Creation brush. So to showcase you what this does, if I put opacity to 100%, decent size, and just click and drag, you can see this is essentially a kind of randomized fuzzy brush of sorts. And if I just put the opacity down and, you know, do stuff like that, you can quickly see it gives you a very random, very interesting, very fuzzy look that works particularly well for, well, for our purpose, nebulas and kind of areas like that. So delete everything on that area again, we activate our star field again, and then we just take all the black color, somewhere around 50% opacity, and you just start painting in. There's only slight changes you should be seeing here. Not much going on right now. And after we've just spread around a little bit of that, we're going to increase the opacity to 100%, decrease the brush size, and then just, you know, keep working on some areas. You can maybe already see in YouTube, I don't know how well it is visible, the differences I'm inputting here. Go once around the outside as well, so that essentially you have a bit of a vignette effect. Okay, so it doesn't look like much has changed maybe, but if I deactivate what we did right now, you should see quite the change still. That's the wonder of these randomized brushes. They do a very lot of good work for you. Next up, I'm going to create a new layer. We're going to go ahead, pick a color, say a not too bright, not too dark blue, and just paint that in. Just a little bit. Okay. And now, one of the keys to a lot of graphics work, in my opinion, is the layer blending options. Down here to the left of the opacity, we have the field where there's a normal. If you click in it, there's a whole lot of options. Just click through them and just cycle through, and you can see some changes here and there. Essentially what we're doing is exactly what it's doing here right now. You should see in the area over here a bit of a blue change. Let me zoom in a little bit to make it more obvious. You can see the difference. Essentially, we want to add in some colored patches here and there. Kind of like that. So if I zoom in a little bit again and enable disable, you should see there's now some patches that are much more intensely blue. It's a bit too much at the moment, so we're going to go ahead and reduce opacity just a tiniest bit. Then we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to do the same with, say, a purple kind of color. You don't need overly many of these patches. It's a matter of how colorful you want your map to have a background. Like before, we just look through what actually works, what colors the stars. It doesn't necessarily work with all the colors. This one may be a bit hard. We may have to use... Ooh, we get interesting green with a divide. We could use that. Not exactly what we went for. Yeah, okay, let's take divide. Let's reduce the opacity a bit. Then we actually have some slight greenish fields here and there. Let's actually add some more to that and reduce the opacity a bit more. Wonderful. Okay, now let's try again. Same purple color still. Just a little bit this time. And this time we're just gonna go ahead and reduce the opacity. Save on now to 40-ish%, and then try again. Some of those that before had looked like nothing changed might now work a little bit differently, but seems like this is not gonna work out with that color. So we go back to normal, up the opacity, and essentially just this never happened, which is fine. Red though should typically work fairly well, so a couple of those. Call it a day. Let's see which one works for our needs. The hard light at low opacity. It can work. It looks still a bit too coherent in parts. We can change that by just taking a fairly soft brush eraser, 30% or so, and just remove some of it. It's all about very small patches, very small intensity. If I just click away all three of these we did just now, you'll see a fairly decent bit of change. Again, how much you want is up to you. I recommend keeping it simple, keeping it low. That will probably serve you best. Okay, so now we've got all of that. We reactivate our star symbol, and then we're gonna put it in its own folder in the structure. And then we take out the type tool, we go to a white color, and size you need to see what works for what you've got. Same with the font, just see what works for your style of map. We're gonna call this the Torino system. It's actually a bit too big for my taste right now, so let's go down to 16. That looks a bit better. And yeah, that's essentially one of our systems. Now we just take the group, we can copy it as I've shown you before, Alt and just click and drag, and you can essentially populate your systems. And that's now more or less the absolute basics. Just give all of them name. Just for the heck of it. There we go. So from here on out, there's obviously a lot you can do. You can decide to create different icons, essentially. Remember what we did at the very beginning? To just give different stars different significance. You could increase or decrease the outer glow. Like here, I honestly think it's still a bit too much. You could go for something a bit closer to what I have here. You could also decide to add completely different icons. You may have a binary solar system that you want to represent with actually two distinct glows fairly close to one another. That can work as well. Just look around at pictures of stars, see if there's something that you want to replicate, and see if you can do it. There's a lot you can do. You can use colors, obviously. There's a lot. The nebulas you essentially do kind of like we did the colorations in the background. So let's create a new layer to show that real quick. Put it on top outside of the folder structure. And say I want a white-gray nebula like I have in the other map I showed you in the beginning. And let's go the opacity down on the scatter brush I use. And then just paint a little bit. Paint with different sizes. Add some interesting detail here and there. And then consider just using some color as well. Especially in space, you always see these pictures and there's always a lot of color going on. Just choose something that you know will work with what you want. And like before, add a new layer on top of that, take a different color, paint something in, and then just see what the layer blend options do. There's a lot of stuff they can enhance that way. Like right here, you see all these very high blue edges. We can instead do something like mixing it in with the overlay here. You know, There's just so many cool options that pop out if you use these things. Just try around, trial and error, always use these layer blend options. There's just a lot of good stuff that can come out of that. And that's essentially how you do nebulas. Text, yeah, just, let's say we want to give it a name. Finish this up properly. We go for a white font again. And we're going to call this the Calliope Nebula. First word that came to mind right now. So here we're going to up the size, obviously, quite a bit. And I recommend that you use a set of distinct fonts for distinct purposes. Like all of the names for colonies and systems, for example, I have in the Doses font at the moment, which is, by the way, free on Google. What's it called? fonts.google.com. There's a lot of good stuff there. And then we, for example, take a nice slab type font. Something like this, yeah. Let's reduce it in size, turn it out a little bit, it over, and at the moment it still looks fairly bleak. So we go to the layer styles, we add a stroke, and here it's once again just trial and error, see what you like. I'm going with a stroke on the outside that is black to essentially give it a bit of outside space. Here you again have these blend modes. So right now you can see there's no actual black around because the multiply doesn't work with black very well. If we switch to normal, you can immediately see the black being all around. Then we could go ahead and give it, say, an outer glow. Put the opacity up, the size up, and then you have a wonderful outward glow. Give it a bit of a fitting color maybe. Whatever suits you, essentially. Yeah, something like that. And yeah, that's the short and quick and dirty of how you do these maps. The rest is just taking the time, placing things properly, do what you want with it, and yeah. Maybe one more thing I can show. If I open up the map I showed before real quick, you can see I have these emanating concentric circles. They are, if you can see it well, let me zoom in, essentially designators for how far something is away from, in this case, the blink gate, jump gate of the setting, Shasta the blink gate. And yeah, easiest way to do them, we create a new layer. We're gonna go ahead and take the elliptical marquee tool to select something. Make sure feather is on 0 pixels. And then, very important, press and hold shift, click and drag. Then you're just gonna fill this with a white. That is our initial circle right now. We're gonna go into the transfer tool and we're gonna give it a discrete width and height. Right now it's all percentages. So we're gonna go to, say, 200 pixel by 200 pixel. Good. Next, we're gonna go ahead and reduce the opacity to 50% and center it on one of those symbols. Symbols, yeah, right. English words, symbols. There we go. It's centered on heck right now. Up the opacity again, and this time go ahead and reduce the fill to 0. The difference between opacity and fill, I can show you that fairly easily. If I go ahead and give this a layer style stroke, say a 2 pixel white, let's make it 1 even. And if I now reduce the opacity, you see it'll all be gone. The fill instead only applies to the pixels on the layer itself. The styles will not be affected. So if we reduce it, we still have the wonderful line we want, which is great. So now we have one of those lines. We can go ahead and do some things with it. For example, say we have an outward glow. Make it fairly small, just a bit of an outglow essentially. give it whatever color you want. Could, for example, be something purple or lightly red. It makes a fair bit of difference if you zoom in. If you're zoomed out, it's not all that visible. Now, the same thing we're going to do on the other side. We're going to give it an inner glow. And the inner glow, we're going to take a blue color, but make it very, very low opacity. And we're going to actually go ahead and reduce the opacity on the red as well. Just so you can barely see it, essentially. And now we're going to reduce the stroke, say to 30%. Yeah, that works. Looks good enough. Okay, now you're just going to go ahead and copy that layer. And then you're going to go to Control T. And we know our one unit, essentially, our base unit is 200 by 100 to 200 pixels. So now we go by 400 by 400, centered on the middle point. And we're gonna essentially keep doing this. And you can also see it's probably still a bit too visible at the moment. So best course of action might just be, reduce the general opacity of these things. There we go. Much better. And that's how you do these concentric circles. It's one of the easiest methods, and I hope all of that helped you. In particular, thank you for asking, Keyboard Cowboy. If you like this, let me know. More or less made this upon your request, so I hope it helps. Anyways, that's it for the regional map, and thanks for watching. See you soon.